in this example, I want to show you how to calculate the cost for a cell phone if you purchased it over a number of years, and depending on whether or not you have a premium charge for more storage space. So I'm going to break this up into 3 different videos. We'll be covering the VLOOKUP to determine the cost, the if function for the total, and that's going to be a simple if function, not a nested one, and then the payment function for the monthly payment. So in our sales data here, we have our versions that each customer will be purchasing. So the phone version is here. We'll calculate the cost of that. And what we'll do is calculate the cost of it based on our table over here. Okay. So if it's a specific phone version, we're going to have Excel do all of the work for us. We're going to have Excel look it up in this table to find where the phone version is here, and then to return the amount of the cost from this table. So that if it's, for example, if it's version 8 right here, it would return $500. If it's version 9 right here, it would return $600. So we're going to have Excel do that for us. And then what we'll do is calculate the total amount of the phone based on whether or not we wanted more storage space, and then the monthly payment amount based on the cost of the phone and the number of years that we'll be paying for the phone, as well as an interest rate. Okay, so in this video, we're going to start with the VLOOKUP. Okay, so the VLOOKUP is the vertical lookup. The reason it's a vertical lookup is because of the data we're using. Okay, it's not this data. It's this data to which we'll refer to in order to find the version of the phone and the cost of the phone. So when we set up our data, it's in columns here. So it's going to go to one column, and that's the first column. It will find the data there. So we want it to find the phone version here. And then it will go to the next column and return the appropriate cost. So if your data is set up in columns like that, it's called a vertical lookup. Okay. If my data were if it was in rows going across, it was going across like this with the amounts below it, then it would be considered a horizontal lookup, an H lookup, because it would look up the phone version here in the first row, and then in the second row it would return the value. So that would be considered an H lookup, okay, because it's in rows. So here, it depends on how your data is set up. So what we're going to do is use a VLOOKUP, and I'm going to go here. You can use the insert function button, or you can go here to more functions. It takes you to the same place. So if you don't find the VLOOKUP here in the most recently used, you can type it here and type up VLOOKUP. Okay. So then we'll double click on it. And what we want to do is we want to complete several different pieces of information here. The lookup value is the value to be found in the first column of the table and can be a value, a reference, or a text string. Okay, so the lookup value is our phone version. Okay, we're going to look that value up in this table. Okay, now we'll do this for the first row. Okay, so we're going to look up B5, which happens to be 9. Okay, and it will tell you here. You can do a logic check. Then the table array is a table of text, numbers, or logical values from which data is retrieved. Okay, so this is our table array. Okay, when Excel looks at this data, it looks at this as being the first column, and it looks at the cost as being the second column. Okay, so it doesn't look at it as being column I and column J necessarily, but it's going to look this up as the first column and the second column of our table array. Okay, so this little part is going to be considered by Excel as a separate little table called a table array. I'm not going to highlight my headings, just the data right here. Okay, so that is my table array. The column index is the column number in the table array, which is right here, from which the matching value, which we're looking up here, should be returned. So when you set up your VLOOKUP table, the first column always has to be the data that you're looking up, right? What you want to find. So I'm going to look up the phone version and find it here. Okay, so that has to be what's listed in the first column of your VLOOKUP. The second column is the value that you want to return. Okay, technically, you could have lots of data in here and your cost could be in column L. So it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4th column in the table array from which we wanted to return the cost. So in this case, we're making it simple. We only have 2 columns of our data here. So what we will do in the column index is this is column 1, this is column 2. So all we have to do is say 2 is the column from where you will return the data that we need. So it will go here, it will find number 9, and then it will go over to column 2 and find 600, and then it will return that and display that in C5. Okay. Now, the range lookup means if you want to find the closest match to whatever you're looking up, being our phone version, you would type in true. If you wanted to find an exact match, you would type in false. So in our case, we have numbers 7 through 10 here in our phone version. So we can find an exact match. So we can type in false. Where you might want to use the true when you're finding the closest match is, for example, when I calculate grades for students and I have a range of data in my table array which says an A is a 90 to 100. So if a student makes a 94.5, that student's grade is not necessarily going to be an exact match in that table. It's just going to find it between 90 and 100. So in that case, you want to find the closest match. Okay, so then you would type in true. So for us, we want the exact match, so we'll type in false. Okay, now watch very carefully what I do next. So I have my lookup value here. I'm going to look it up in this table array. I'm going to find the value here and then return the corresponding value from column 2. And I want to find the exact match of that. Okay, now if I copy that down the column using the fill handle, I have a problem. Okay, so number 10 is 700, so that looks correct, but right here this looks incorrect. And this is only giving us 8. Okay, so I'm going to go to the first one that looks incorrect. So it's looking up B7, which that's correct. It's looking up this value in I8 to J11. Okay, so I8 to J11, that's this. It starts right here and goes down to 11. Okay. And then it's going to find what's in the second column, and then it's going to be false. So because it's starting this from I8 to J11, I8 is right here, and there's no 7 from I8 to J11 in column I. So it can't find it. That's why it's saying it's not applicable. It can't find it, not available. So the problem is when we set up our table array, as it's copying it down, it's taking the relative reference, and you can see that it's changing the row reference when we copy that down, which is fine for the phone version because we want that to change for each customer. But for the table array, we want everybody's to be compared to the same table array, right? From I6 all the way down to J9. Okay, so that's the problem. We did not make the I6 to J9 absolute, so we need to go back in and change that. So I'll just go here and press F4 and F4 here. I'm just going to use a pure absolute reference just to make that easier. I'm going to press Enter, and I'm going to copy that down the column again, so that now we have numbers that look reasonable. And if we do a logic check on a couple of them, the 8 should be 500, the 10 should be 700, and the 9 should be 600, and so forth. So that looks correct. And if you look at the references when you've copied it down the column, you'll see that the first one is still a relative reference. It changes relative to how you've copied it from one row to the next. But the table array reference stays the same because it's absolute. Okay, so in the next video, a separate video, I will continue to the if function.